ChatGPT Plus is free for college students through May. Here's the thing. You've got a lot to do between now and then. Studying for finals, writing papers, trying to keep your life on track, and ChatGPT can help with all of it. It can quiz you for your econ exam, make a study guide from your French notes, plan out your meals and study breaks. It can get really specific on how you like to learn. It can even help you come up with ways to stop procrastinating. So from now until summer break, take advantage of all the ways ChatGPT can make your life easier. Restrictions apply.
This is the Roger Stone Show on 77 WABC.
A man who's gone through hell, but he's kept going, and he's smart, and he's strong, and people love him. Not everybody, but people love him and respect him. Roger Stone.
Now, here's Roger Stone.
Welcome back. I'm Roger Stone, and this is the Roger Stone Show at 77 WABC Radio. We are the crown jewel of AM radio. You can listen to us worldwide at WABCradio.com. So there's never an excuse to miss a minute of the great programming or entertainment here at 77 WABC Radio. Joining me now is one of the giants of radio, Joe Pagliarulo, better known as Joe Pags, has had an amazing career in radio. He's won multiple Associated Press awards for excellence in journalism. He is a strong voice who never, ever leaves any doubt about what he thinks or where he stands. He's a mainstay, a staple in San Antonio, Texas. He's become a very, very good personal friend, and I am honored to have Joe Pags join us on the Roger Stone Show now.
Roger, the honor is all mine. Thanks for having me, buddy.
So we'll get into this in a moment. You, over this past week, had two extraordinary interviews, including an interview with President Donald Trump, who ironically was our very, very first guest here on the Roger Stone Show, but also one with Tulsi Gabbard, a former Democrat, now an independent, speculated by some as being a potential vice presidential candidate. But before we get into any of that, I want to talk about the power of radio. People, I think, in our society today, I think they misunderstand or undervalue the power of radio as a medium, particularly as a medium when you want to reach very specific people. You've been in the industry for decades. Talkers Magazine has repeatedly rated you as one of the heavy 100. That means one of the most influential voices in talk radio. Talk to us about the medium and how it is today, how you think it has changed, and what's the impact on the American people?
Boy, so much has changed. I started in 1989, so 35 years now. And I did television for a long time in between. That's where I won all those awards that you mentioned. I appreciate you mentioning that. But radio is the mainstay. I think that the death of radio has been predicted probably 30 million times, and it just doesn't go away. Then they try to take AM radio out of cars. That didn't make any sense, so it won't go away. People still like to be able to relate to Roger Stone when they turn on 77 WABC. They still want to relate to me when they turn on one of my 170 stations across the country. Ironically or coincidentally, Roger, I love WABC. When I was a television news anchor in Albany, Schenectady, Troy, New York, I actually called the program director at WABC, and I said, hey, put me on the air. He said, okay, tough guy, come on down. And I came down, and I did a show on Saturday morning. I was filling in for a guy who was off. So my first sort of foray back into radio from TV was on WABC. But the impact of this station specifically, I grew up on Long Island, New York, and I remember the first radio station I heard was this one. And the impact it had on me as a guy who wanted to end up doing that eventually as a career, it's something I'll never forget. But has it changed? Yes. Is the audience a little bit older? Yeah, because you can digitally get a lot of these online, just like you said in the beginning. Go to the website, you can listen to it worldwide. But it doesn't change the fact that it's a guy or a gal sitting into a microphone talking about interesting things, and if it's interesting enough, the audience will stay there. No matter how they're consuming it, radio still is where it starts. It's still the nucleus of the atom, if you will, when it comes to information. And I love that we're a part of it.
Yeah, I could not agree more. The idea that Ford, General Motors, Tesla actually floated the idea that their next generation of vehicles would be without an AM radio receiver, which is, by the way, extraordinarily inexpensive for them. Our leader here, John Catsimatidis, took a very aggressive stand against that, spoke out publicly, went to Washington, called important legislators, and I'm happy to say, thanks largely to his efforts, they backed off. The emergency broadcast system, which the country still relies on, is based in AM radio. So it was an incredibly counterproductive and not even a cost-efficient idea. I love radio, and frankly, I love the feedback I get from being here every Sunday. It lasts all week. We'll talk about something here on the Roger Stone Show, and I'll get text messages, emails, even letters in the mail about it for days. The impact is very, very real. Have you ever seen the media role as antagonists, as not people who cover the news, but people who are constantly proselytizing and putting forward their own narrative as we see today?
It's a great question, and I want to get to that in a second. Let me just say, John Catsimatidis came on my show when the whole AM radio thing was going on, and he was amazing in how he stood up for people like you and me because of the information that we bring. And he also stood up for the fact that, yes, Americans still rely on the emergency broadcast system. So he did an incredible job, the boss at WABC, in keeping us on the air and telling the automakers that was a really nice try, but it's not going to work. When it comes to Andrea Mitchell, what I saw yesterday, Roger, not only did she just allege that, okay, forget the polling, forget your lying eyes, she also, I don't know if you saw this part, where she looked visibly upset that Nikki Haley was dropping out. She looked visibly upset that it looks like Donald Trump is going to be the nominee now. And we all knew that going in. There really was no question that he was going to be the nominee. But when you see MSNBC and you see them take a stance like, A, the polling that we just reported is not true, which is just stupid. But they'll also say, we're not going to run a speech from the former president who just won almost every state in a landslide on Super Tuesday. We're not going to run what he's got to say because journalistically we can't fact check him as he goes. Roger, have you ever seen in your life? Because, listen, I covered the 2000 election extensively when you had Al Gore arguing for 36 days that he didn't lose, and you had George W. Bush called early, and then they rescinded Florida and so on. I've never seen anywhere near this sort of antagonism, this sort of animosity towards a candidate. Andrea Mitchell's job, she's made her millions on reporting the story. Barbara Walters would never have done what Andrea Mitchell and Leslie Stahl are doing when it comes to Donald Trump. So, yeah, I did see that, and I also saw the look on her face where she looked visibly ill that she now has to admit that Trump is the guy, and he's probably going to win in November.
Yeah, I love that 60 Minutes interview in which the longtime broadcaster Leslie Stahl tries to tell President Trump, there's no evidence that your campaign was spied on, none whatsoever. But here's the best part. We're 60 Minutes. We can't just report things that aren't true. Well, Joe, we now know definitively, based on the report by Special Counsel John Durham, and also the conclusions, sadly, of Robert Mueller's investigation, that the Trump campaign was spied on. The denial by those in the mainstream media is really extraordinary.
Well, Roger, let me just add to what you just said. On the day he was inaugurated, the New York Times had a headline on the front page saying that they were surveilling Trump Tower. I mean, it's right there. That sort of floated away somehow. She also argued that Hunter Biden's laptop, there was no evidence that it was real and that it was somehow Russian disinformation. If you go back and look at that interview, Trump handled her so well, and he was so right in everything that he said. But what really is telling for anybody listening in the audience right now, don't go to bed without this in the back of your head. Leslie Stahl, nor CBS, nor 60 Minutes has ever apologized, has ever retracted, has ever said, hey, man, we got that one wrong. Don't ever take anything they say as news or truth again until they come to the highest mountain with the loudest megaphone saying he was right, we were wrong, we should have done more research and done better reporting on that. But, Roger, they're never going to admit that, are they?
No, they really aren't. Listen, I'm very familiar with what you speak of. Imagine waking up on January 20th, 2017. It's inauguration day. Donald Trump's about to be sworn in. It's a very happy day for my wife and my family and I. We are in Washington for the inauguration. And I read a story above the fold on page 1 of the New York Times that says that I am one of 3 individuals, along with Paul Manafort and Carter Page, who are under federal surveillance for our contacts with the Russians. And of course, I know I haven't had any contacts with the Russians. I called the New York Times reporters who wrote that story. And of course, they can't and wouldn't reveal their sources, but they insist to this day that the story was accurate. It totally and completely contradicts what Lesley Stahl was trying to tell us. And then, as you know, because we talked about this just a few days ago, we learned very recently that CIA Director John Brennan, presumably at the behest of the Obama administration, went to the intelligence agencies of the Five Eyes, the so-called 5 English-speaking nations, to ask their intelligence services to start surveilling and bump, that means entrap, 26 individual supporters or advisors to Donald Trump, among whom I was one. Now, nobody is going to pay any price for this. It's highly illegal. It's highly unusual as well. But there will be no consequences for that, will there?
Well, Roger Brennan and James Comey and Andrew McKay, these Peter Strzok, they're all walking around free. And your name was sullied. They never apologized in the news media. I think the government owes you tons of money for the illegal activity they were pulling just to try to get you to turn on Donald Trump. Listen, Roger, we talked about this over dinner. If you would have turned on Donald Trump, you would have been scot-free. You would have been the darling of the media. You would have gotten $1 million offers from all the networks to come on there and be some sort of a Michael Cohen. But the fact is, you stand on truth. You stand on fact. You stand on your friendship and relationship with Donald Trump, and you knew there was no Russia collusion. You knew there was no involvement whatsoever by Russia. And all of these agencies, listen, John Brennan should be behind bars. Clapper should be behind bars. So should Jim Comey. Instead, they're writing books and making money as contributors. What they did to you and to Papadopoulos and what they did to Carter Page, that they didn't even know he was working for the government when they were surveilling him. It's so stupid. The whole thing that they did, they can't possibly come out and tell the truth, Roger, because then they're going to have egg on their faces for all of time. So they're still pretending that there was still something there when there wasn't anything there. And I feel for a guy like you, because how do you clear your name? Now, you have with me, and anybody who's got a brain, of course, you're Roger Stone, the honest guy, and didn't do anything wrong. But there is a segment of the population in this country that still thinks you're somehow a bad guy because all the lies they told about you. It makes me sick.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And of course, I had the added problem of being gagged by a federal judge, so I couldn't even defend myself. Anyway, let's move to more important and much happier topics. Normally speaking, when one looks for a vice president, Richard Nixon once told me, don't look for someone who can help you, just look for someone who doesn't hurt you. Which is kind of ironic because in his 2 choices, Spiro Agnew in 1968 and Senator Henry Cabot Lodge in 1960, a case could be made that in both cases, unlike Jack Kennedy, who chose Lyndon Johnson, who did help him dramatically, that the 2 candidates chosen by Nixon were probably not helpful to him. As we look forward, obviously, President Trump has a very, very difficult decision to make. He has to choose someone who, first and foremost, is fully qualified, that based on experience and temperament and judgment, has the ability to run the country, has the ability, if, God forbid, something should happen to Donald Trump, or he cannot fulfill his term, this person has what it takes to run the country. Secondarily, he needs somebody who is fully committed to the America First agenda, to the Trump non-interventionist agenda, so that there will be no temptation by those in the deep state to either remove him through illicit means. I've written a book on the Kennedy assassination. I know what I'm talking about. Where do you think the president should go in terms of a running mate? Does he choose somebody who is safe, assuming they meet all those other criteria? Does he choose somebody who is safe, meaning they don't bring you any new votes, but they please your base? Or do you think he has to go outside the norms of politics and choose somebody who will bring some voter group or have an appeal to some voter group that he does not yet have behind him?
Well, if you don't mind, I'm going to offer three people up. And I think that these are the three top in my mind. And one of them makes people mad, but you and I agree on this one that I'm going to talk about. I think Ben Carson would be a perfect vice president. I think Ben Carson has the temperament you need to counterbalance the president's, A-type personality. Ben Carson will walk into a room, and you want to shut up and listen to him. He's that intellectual. But he really, really, really loves this country. Plus, he grew up as a very, very poor guy in Detroit. I think he brings the Midwest in. He tells that story well enough, and he's done it many times on my show. I think that his history as the premier neurosurgeon on the planet, coming from where he came from, is a story that a lot of people in this country need to hear. The second one is Tulsi Gabbard, that you and I have talked about a lot. I like Tulsi a lot. I had an extended interview with her this week, about 22 minutes, and man, she's saying the right things. And when people question her bona fides or bona fides as a conservative and somebody who's no longer a Democrat, I asked her every question you want to ask her. And she gave me the straight answer, and the straight answer was, listen, I walked away from that side because they've gone nuts. I'm not a Republican. I'm an independent, but I want to see President Trump in that office. She also is the smartest person I've talked to when it comes to Ukraine and not being the interventionist that you were talking about and not being the police officer of the world. She reminded me a lot interviewing her as Rand Paul. But here's somebody with military experience. Here's somebody who's still a lieutenant colonel as we speak. And here's somebody who I think can bring in a completely different audience that is moderate, that even leans a little bit left and leans a little bit right. And she's saying the right things on the issues right now. And the wild card, Roger, for me is Vivek Ramaswamy. Here's a guy that is a billionaire, has run corporations very, very well. He's young. He's in his 30s. And he brings in an energy about America that I haven't seen in a long time. Now, a lot of people question, does he have Soros ties? Does he have WEF, this and that? I'm not worried about that because he's covered all of that on my show and probably with you as well. But here's a guy that I think can bring in a completely younger audience at a time where maybe our side of the aisle needs that. I wonder what you think about those three choices. I know you like Tulsi. I know you know all of them. I just wonder what you think about it.
Excellent question. I like all three. By the way, if I had to make up a short list, this would be my short list. Ben Carson's a good man. He's solid. He's dependable. He is most definitely committed to the Trump agenda. I think there's a huge advantage, and I think you figured this out. What do those three people all have in common? Well, they've all run for president themselves. That means they know how it works. They know that the jackals in the fake news media are going to be out from the very first second of you, after you've been named as the nominee, to try to trick you, to try to get you to make a mistake, to try to get you to somehow contradict the presidential candidate that you're on the ticket with. So I would be extraordinarily comfortable with Ben Carson. Folks, if you're just tuning in, this is the Roger Stone Show. I'm here with Joe Pags, Joe Pagliarulo, one of the giants of talk radio, and we'll be right back with more of Joe Pags.
This episode is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Do you ever find yourself playing the budgeting game? Well, with the Name Your Price tool from Progressive, you can find options that fit your budget and potentially lower your bills. Try it at Progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law. Not available in all states.
Mic check. 1, 2. Are we recording? Hi, I'm Michelle Bernstein, an award-winning chef, restaurateur, and mom. I have a lot on my plate, including my psoriatic arthritis symptoms. That's why I was prescribed Cosentyx. It helps me move better.
Cosentyx secukinumab is prescribed for people 2 years of age and older with active psoriatic arthritis. Don't use if you're allergic to Cosentyx. Before starting, get checked for tuberculosis. An increased risk of infections and lowered ability to fight them may occur, like tuberculosis or other serious bacterial, fungal, or viral infections. Some were fatal. Tell your doctor if you have an infection or symptoms like fevers, sweats, chills, muscle aches, or cough, had a vaccine or plan to, or if inflammatory bowel disease symptoms develop or worsen. Serious allergic reactions and severe eczema-like skin reactions may occur. Learn more at 1-844-COSENTYX or Cosentyx.com.
Ask your rheumatologist about Cosentyx.
This is the Roger Stone Show on 77 WABC.
Welcome back, folks. This is the Roger Stone Show at 77 WABC Radio. Don't touch that dial. We are here with Joe Pags, Joe Pagliarulo, who is one of the giants of talk radio. And Joe, you just had an interview with President Donald Trump. I admit to you that I haven't had a chance to listen to it, but I'm certainly going to. I'm very honored to say that the very first show we had here at 77 WABC Radio was a wide-ranging interview with President Trump. I got to ask him, for example, about UFOs and whether they really exist. It was a great interview. Tell us about your time with President Trump.
It's interesting because I went back and counted it, Roger. This is the 14th interview I've done with him, which is kind of crazy to me. Donald Trump is a very smart man. He's a great businessman, was an incredible president, and getting him to trust you is something that takes a minute. He's not stupid. So when I first had him on back in 2015, when he first started running, there was a little bit of apprehension there. Now we just laughed and we talked like a couple of guys. He's one thing that people listening don't understand about Donald Trump, unless you've spoken with him, is that he's a really nice man. He just is. He's a nice guy. And nobody knew this, but I'll tell you, you're the one person that will nationally know this. Before we started, I lost my father-in-law recently, and I asked him if he could say a word to my mother-in-law, and he did. He did it on tape for me, and I gave it to her, and it made her entire life that President Trump would do something like that. I think people think he's always hard around the edges, and he's not. He's a very nice guy when you sit down and personally talk to him. So I started the interview off just because he probably had done 4 interviews before me, and the media's treating him like garbage. He's in court all the time. My first question, Roger, was, will you sell me Mar-a-Lago for $18 million? And I said, come on, you're a deal maker. I'll give you $18 million right now. And he laughed, and then we talked about Letitia James and how ridiculous she is, how she ran to target one American, and that sort of set the tone, I think, for the entire interview. It went about 16, 17 minutes, and we covered just about everything we possibly could. What I took away from that, and you know this because you still go and see him all the time and you're very close with him, he's still energized, and I don't get it. He's still ready to go. I don't get it. This guy can ride around in a golden golf cart for the rest of his life if he wants and never do any of this again, and all of this prosecution would go away. All the persecution would go away immediately. But he doesn't because he loves the country. He's the one president in my lifetime that lost money as the president of the United States, and he doesn't seem to care. And I've asked him 30 times, and so have you, why do you keep doing this? And he does it because he's afraid for the future of the country, for his kids, his grandkids, and for all of us. And what really jumps out at me about Donald Trump every time I speak to him, because he's a very, very rich, very successful guy. He reminds me of my father because he's a blue-collar guy. He's blue-collar guy who's got billions of dollars. If you can have the two in one guy, you've got it with Donald Trump. He does understand workers. He does understand labor unions. He does understand minorities. He does understand people that are downtrodden or those who are on the way up. And that's what I always take away. Now, there are specific things that we talked about in the interview, and I hope that you'll listen to it. Maybe your audience can go to rumble.com/Joe Pags and go watch it there. But the bottom line for me is I always walk away going, he's a nice guy who gets it, and he's in a stratosphere financially where he doesn't have to get it, but he does, if that makes sense.
No, I think you hit it right on the head. He's a billionaire who has never lost his touch for the regular people. He's a billionaire from Queens, New York. I can tell you, if you gave him a choice of having dinner with a group of cab drivers or a group of plumbers or having dinner with a group of Fortune 500 CEOs, I know which one he would choose. There's nothing phony about him. There's no artifice. There's no acting as you see so often in politics. Look, I worked for presidents. I've been active in over 700 political campaigns, almost every one of those candidates had a private persona and a public persona, and they were completely different. That is not true of Donald Trump. He's the same guy you see on TV, the same guy you hear on the radio, that you meet in person. There's only one Donald Trump, and he's completely genuine. In other words, there's nobody giving him talking points. There's no handler. There's no manager. There's no puppeteer. It's all him. He's very strong-willed. I think, in a way, his stubbornness is his absolutely greatest quality. So when he became president, they said, well, Mr. President, the Paris Climate Accords, I know you said we were going to pull out, but you realize we can't really do that. He said, no, we're doing it. Oh, Mr. President, they said, well, we know you said that you were going to cancel the Iranian arms deal in which we were paying Iran billions of dollars to build nuclear weapons behind our backs. But you understand that the deal is already signed, that we really can't do that. He said, no, we're absolutely doing it. So when they made him, they broke the mold. To me,
well, Roger, I've got to interject this because you forgot one, and that's really important. You didn't forget it; you just didn't mention it. He said he would move the capital, our embassy, from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, and 12 presidents said that before him, and he actually did it. They said, "You're not really going to do that. That would make a complete war break out in the Middle East." He did it. He opened it, and not only wasn't there a war, you had the Abraham Accords, and you had all sorts of more peace happening in the Middle East. So, I mean, to your point, the guy literally thought that he had to do what he said he would do, and then he did it. Whereas other people who ran for office said, I don't have to do that. I got the office now. Well, why would I have to follow through? The guy really followed through, which blows my mind.
The last point is just his innate toughness. I mean, under that kind of entertaining and sometimes self-deprecating exterior, I worked for Richard Nixon. He was a very tough guy. He clawed his way back from political defeat. Great political comeback. I worked for Senator Bob Dole, hit by a shell in Italy during World War II, told that he'd never walk again. He'd never have the use of his arms or his legs again.
By the way.
Never dress himself again. Nursed him back to health. Would have been a great president. I must tell you, Donald Trump, tougher than either one. The toughest man I know. This is the man I want leading America. This is the man I want speaking for America. All right. Well, unfortunately, we could do this for the rest of the day, and I would love it, but we are out of time. I want to thank Joe Pagliarulo, one of the giants of radio in this country. Folks, go to rumble.com/Joe Pags to listen to all of my friends' work. Joe, thank you so much for joining us today on The Roger Stone Show.
Roger, it's an absolute honor. This is one of the best talk shows on the planet, and I'm so glad to be a part of it. Thank you.
God bless you.